they them pronouns, and I'm an aromantic. And I'm here today to talk about what that means, and especially what that means to me. So I've got some questions here that have been asked by the general public, just information they want to know about aromanticism, and I'm going to try and answer them for you. Which is, what is aromanticism? So aromanticism is a romantic identity that is most commonly categorized as being or having no romantic attraction or little to no interest in romance. For myself, I have no attraction, and I describe that to most people as I don't fall in love. I've never really been in love, and I don't understand what that would mean. It's a very strange and weird concept to me. What was your relationship with romance like before you knew you were aromantic? Bad. It was really weird because there's so many stories and so much media about true love and soulmates, and everything has to have a romance, otherwise it's not interesting enough. And it creates this pressure. And so, because I didn't feel the way that I thought I should feel, and I thought it was just exaggerated for TV, you know, nothing's like it is on TV, nothing's like media. But apparently it is for some people, which is a weird concept to me. And so for a long time, I just figured there was something wrong with me because I wasn't how society and media said I should be. So yeah, no, bad relationship with romance. I'm still not overly fond of romantic media. I don't watch things like romantic comedies at all, or a lot of overly romantic movies. It's just very not comfortable for me. Next question. What would aromantic people like for other rainbow/queer people to do, say, or stop doing and saying? Stop saying love is love. Stop using it as your slogan for the queer community. I understand that there have been restrictions on who queer people have been able to love, and it's important to recognize that, and like having the ability to love who you love is important, but we don't need to center it, because being queer is not just about who you love. Like, for instance, trans people are trans whether or not they're straight, gay, bi, whatever, and aromantic people are queer because we don't love, or at least we don't love in the same way that we're expected to. And we really need to center, because when you say love is love, it is very obvious that everyone is talking about romantic love. And it alienates us. It alienates us from a community where we're supposed to find support and acceptance. And instead it just others us. And it is very harmful. So I'm not saying don't say it, but please stop centering it. It's not the most important thing about the queer community. All right. Aromanticism is sometimes mistaken under the asexual label. How do you think they're different? This is a big one. So, aromanticism is not asexuality. I myself am aromantic and bisexual. I have nothing to do with asexuality. It's not who I am. I'm not a part of the community. I don't identify with the label. And I'm not the only one. It's very important to recognize that aromantic is its own identity, its own label, its own umbrella. subsets of aromanticism, the aromantic spectrum, people who classify and further define their aromanticism, and all of that has nothing to do with asexuality. They're separate. Think of it like a Venn diagram. You know, you've got asexuality on one side and aromanticism on the other. It can overlap, and for those people, they may consider their identity to be the same thing. But that doesn't mean their labels are. So for myself, my aromanticism and my bisexuality are the same thing. I can't separate them. I use both labels, but it's the one identity. And for some people, being aro and ace is like that. But that doesn't mean the communities are the same. It doesn't mean the labels are the same. I think of them as siblings or cousins. We grew up in the same way, you know. Asexuality and aromanticism came first from the bi label because a lot of us didn't understand, and when you have no attraction, your attraction to everyone is the same. So a lot of people find themselves under the bi label. And then from asexuality, the aromantic community grew. It's a relatively new community, and the first aromantics were asexuals, yes, but we're not the same thing. You know, we grew up together and now we're growing apart, and it's time to find our way in the world separately. That doesn't mean we can't help each other. That doesn't mean we're not friends or family or connected, but it's not the same thing. And I think that's a very important distinction to make for a lot of people. Aromanticism is its own label, and it should be treated as such. And we shouldn't just be lumped in under asexual. Can an aromantic still be in a fulfilling long-term relationship with someone who isn't aromantic? Yes. So myself, I am in a committed relationship. We're coming up on our 1-year anniversary, which I'm very excited about, and we're making a lot of plans for our future. And he is not aromantic. He's, well, the opposite, which would be alloromantic. So someone who does experience some form of romantic attraction. And the relationship is a romantic one. You know, it has its ups and downs, has its pros and cons, but we still make it work. I mean, I said before that I've never been in love, and I do believe that, but at the same time, this is the one person that I believe either does or could make me feel like I'm in love. And that's not the same for everyone, but they can definitely, whether or not that happens to them, aromantics can be in a fulfilling relationship, whether it's a romantic one or a non-romantic. So there's a thing that's very common in the aromantic community called queer platonic relationships, which is very difficult to define down to one definition. I'm not going to even try because it's so personal to someone, but it is at its heart a committed relationship that is not romantic and is not seen as romantic. It's a committed non-romantic relationship, and the specifics of that are as vast and wild as people are. But I know people who have gotten married and had kids and reached all sorts of relationship markers in queer platonic relationships, just as society would tell you to do in romantic ones. And I know people who have chucked all societal expectations out the window and just done their own thing and had long-term fulfilling relationships, romantic, queer platonic, monogamous, polyamorous, relationship anarchy, whatever works for them. You know, aromantics are a type of people that are as varied as any other group of people. They all have different opinions, and for some of us, we want a connection that comes with a relationship. And it's quite possible for us to have that. So, I love my boyfriend very much. And I love my relationship. So, yes, it's quite possible to have a fulfilling relationship as an aromantic. Keep going. What does aromanticism mean to you? It's a bit tough to pin down, to be honest. You know, I can give you the definition again, but in general, my aromanticism is inherently a part of me. It's who I am. It's how I see the world. It's how I interpret things. It's me. It gives me a sense of freedom in that I've been able to question a lot of things like societal norms and expectations and figure out which ones I wanted for myself and which ones I actually didn't. It's taken pressure off me, but it's also, you know, it's a balancing scale. It's also caused a lot of anxiety. It's caused some problems, which isn't my aromanticism in and of itself. It's the way society treats romance and those who don't fit into ideals of romance. For a while, my aromanticism meant I was broken. It meant there was something wrong with me. And then I learned what the word was and that it wasn't me. And it meant a sense of healing. It meant peace, knowing about myself and being able to explain why I felt the way I felt and that there wasn't anything wrong with me. It's one of the more complicated identities, I believe, to learn about, to realize that you are, because so much of it questions everything we're told and everything we learn and everything we think we want. But I think it's a very important identity because it makes you question. I think it has impacts beyond the aromantic community, and I think everyone can learn some very valuable lessons from aromanticism. Why I do what I do. That's why I speak about aromanticism and educate. Do you remember discovering the word aromantic? I mean, I can't give you a date. I can't tell you when. I think it was about 2014 sometime. I know I found the word and the identity just in time for the Aromantic Awareness Week, back when it was held in November, which I believe was in 2014. I found out through Tumblr, which is not an uncommon experience. A lot of the aromantic community is online. I was scrolling, you know, not really seeing what I was reading, and there was a general Aromanticism 101 post. And something caught my eye because I'd scrolled past, and I went back up to look at it and I read through and I kind of went, oh. And I thought about it and I was like, oh. Because it's like a light bulb going off. It was sort of went, oh, this is me. This explains me. It was sort of a world turns on its head moment, you know. Everything got reordered for me. Things were suddenly clear that I hadn't understood before. And I was able to put things into words that I'd never been able to express. And it was a very profound and changing moment for me. So I don't remember the exact date, but yes, I do remember discovering Aromantic. And I'm very, very glad I did. What are some of the worst aromantic misconceptions in your eyes? Oh, there's a few doozies. We're not heartless. We're not robots. We're not cold. We weren't traumatized or abused, or at least not all of us were. You don't have to be any of those to be aromantic, and if you are one of those and you're aromantic, it's not a bad thing. You know, there's so many people that I've told that I'm aromantic and I explain what that means. They go, oh, I'm sorry for you. And I'm like, why? What is so wrong about me that you're sorry for who I am, for what I am? We're people just like any other. And we are a range of people. We're not all one thing. And even if we are one thing, it's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, so yeah, don't call us heartless, don't call us robots. Stop making the villains in your stories incapable of love. I'm looking at you, J.K. Rowling. I will never forgive her for Voldemort and, you know, everything else, but that is a personal one. Don't demonize us. We're just people. We just want to be accepted. We just want people to be okay with who we are. That's it. What do you say to people who think you just haven't met the right person? I met the right person. Still aromantic. My identity has nothing to do with whether or not I've met the right person. It's like how you wouldn't go to someone who says I'm gay and go, oh, but you haven't met the right woman yet. You know, you don't do that. It's rude. It's insulting to think that, you know, there's someone out there who could fundamentally change a part of who I am. And like, that's the thing, I have met someone that I care about very much, and I'm still aromantic. You know, it hasn't changed me. It doesn't. It's just part of who I am, and no one person can change that. So, you know, don't tell us we haven't met the right person. Don't be sorry for us. We're just us. We like being us. Is it true that aromantic people don't feel love? That is not true. Aromantic people don't feel romantic attraction. And romantic attraction is not love. You don't instantly love everyone you're romantically attracted to, first of all. But also there's other kinds of love. Aromantics can still love their friends, their family, their pets. Love isn't just about romance. And even aside from that, there are people on the aromantic spectrum who are people who have defined their aromanticism down into more specific definitions. So the most commonly known are demi-romantics, grey romantics, square romantics. It's a French pronunciation, don't yell at me. So demi-romantics are people who don't fall in love without a strong emotional bond. And like, they need to know that person very well. And then grey romantics are many and varied, but it means that they have some sort of abnormal relationship with romantic attraction. Maybe it comes and goes. Maybe they feel it for certain kinds of people and not for others. Maybe they feel it once every blue moon. Maybe they need to form a specific blood sacrifice ritual. Like, it's really dependent on their own definitions. And I'm not on the aromantic spectrum. My relationship with romance is nada, nil, kaput. So I don't feel comfortable speaking for them. These are just definitions that I've heard or read through my work with aromantic activism. And it's very important to include aromantic spectrum people in talks about aromanticism, because they are just as important. They are just as aromantic. They are just as much part of the community as every other aromantic. That's why, like, it is important to not completely discount romance from aromanticism. As much of a quandary or a contradiction as that seems, there are aromantics who feel romance. And just because you are an aromantic who doesn't feel romance doesn't mean you can't feel love. I'm sure there are plenty of non-aromantic people who would agree you love your family, your friends. You know, that doesn't go away because you've fallen in love with someone. Us not being able to fall in love doesn't get rid of our other forms of care and affection. Do you have sex? I do. Personally, I can't say for every aromantic, obviously. Some of them are asexual, which, of course, being asexual doesn't mean you can't have sex, but it is fairly common for asexuals to at least dislike the idea. Again, aromantics are a many and varied group of people. What works for one won't work for another, so you can be an aromantic and you can be sex repulsed. You can be an aromantic and sex neutral. You can be sex favorable. You can be an aromantic asexual, who is any of those. Your romantic identity doesn't have much bearing on whether or not you have sex. Action doesn't equal attraction. So, myself personally, yes, I do have sex. I'm not an asexual, and I'm not sex repulsed, so. And I'm definitely not the only aromantic in the world who feels the same way. Alright, second last. What is it like existing in a society where romance is treated as the default setting? Exhausting. It is tiring. Everything everywhere is romance. Romance is a pedestal. On a pedestal, I should say. It's considered so important. You know, everyone thinks you want to grow up and get married and find your soulmate and fall in love, and it's considered one of the basics of humanity. You know, how many times have people seen media where all the person needed was to fall in love and find that one person? And it's exhausting going through that when you don't feel it, because I'll tell you right now, romance is not an intrinsic part of being human. There are some of us who do just fine without it. And society's focus on romance is A, relatively new in history, and B, exhausting. You know, it's everywhere. Romantic industries make billions of dollars off the idea of romance. Valentine's Day is awful for so many aromantics. It is a focus in the society, and that is very draining. To exist as an aromantic in a society that constantly tells you that if you don't love romantically, there's something wrong with you. Okay, last question. If you're in a relationship with someone who isn't aro, how does this differ to a normal friendship? Entirely depends on the people in the relationship. For me, like I've said, my relationship is a romantic relationship. I've been in several romantic relationships since coming out as aro. It has all been because my partners are accepting of the fact that I am aromantic, and I have no problem with their romantic feelings for me. You know, I'm not romance repulsed, and I don't mind people having romantic feelings for me. For myself, my romantic relationships haven't felt too much different from my relationships when I thought I was romantic. They might be a bit more intimate than my friendships. By intimacy, I mean, you know, casual affection, my trust, the things I confide in them. It's not any better than my friendships. It's not more important than my friendships. But this one is a very personal one. So this one is my opinion on this, my feelings about my relationships. For some people, they define their relationships very differently. And there may be no difference between their committed queer platonic relationships, their committed relationships, and their friendships, apart from the labels that they give them. And the distinctions may be only seen to them. It's a very nuanced and personal topic that is hard to give a generalization on. One thing I will say about it though is please stop using the phrase more than friends. Your friends should not be a stepping stone on the way to your romantic relationships. You shouldn't inherently consider your romantic relationships more important than your friendships. You know, those phrases, more than friends, oh, they're just friends. It's very telling of the hierarchies in your relationships. And they can be very damaging, especially for people who place more stock in platonic friendships and queer platonic relationships than romance. Alright, so I hope you've learned something about aromanticism. Please keep in mind that this is just one aromantic's opinion. You know, it's a community, there are a lot of different people, and there are people with different opinions to mine, and that's fine and dandy. You know, I wouldn't want to be in a community where everyone thought the same thing. But if you have any more questions or you'd like to learn anything more, please visit my organisation, AUREA, or Curious Minds on Facebook. And yeah, we'll have information and resources, and you can learn a lot more about aromanticism. Thank you very much for watching. I hope I've taught you something.